What is up, everyone? Boshi here, back at it, and we actually have two summoning events going on this weekend. Let's jump into it. Alright guys, yes, you heard correctly. We have two summoning events going on this weekend. The very first one is going to be the one that you guys expect, and that is going to be a regular 10 times event. No additional chances to get epics or legendaries, just a better chance at getting a set of champions. But the next one is actually a guaranteed legendary, extra legendary, and that's only through summoning ancient shards. The way it works is if you happen to summon a legendary using ancient shards this weekend, you will get an additional one extra. It's only going to happen once per user during this event, so I'd imagine it's going to be something like how they had with Countess Lix, where you have like a notification thing within the summoning stone itself, and then once it happens, and you will no longer have that message of being able to get that extra legendary from the ancient shard. Keep in mind, it is only from ancient shards, and yes, always remember my rule, make sure you're clicking on the summoning stone right here. I'd imagine the message will show up once you clicked on ancient shards. Always click the information button so you can figure out what 10 times champions are going to be here. We're going to go ahead and go over them here in just a second. Unfortunately, I do think it's somewhat worth summoning during this event. Typically, I do not condone going into many 10 times events just because, like I said, the chances of getting an epic or legendary are not higher. But these 10 times champions are pretty dang good. So let's go ahead and just jump right into the champions. So right off the bat, we're going to start out with a really good one, and it is Septimus. So Septimus, Bannerlord, attack champion. I'm sure a lot of you guys already know what he does, but let's go through the kit anyway. So on the A1, we have Behead. Attack one enemy, grants an extra turn, and resets the cooldown on this champion's Holy Sword skill if the target is killed. You have a bunch of books for damage right here. On the A2, attack one enemy, or called Holy Sword. Attack one enemy will ignore shield and block damage buffs. Damage increases according to enemy max HP. This is like the very hard hitting ability and does get reset based off of the A1 if you kill someone with the A1, which is really cool. Yeah, nothing much to say about this. He hits extremely hard with this ability. And then on this passive, I should say, Giant Killer, each attack has a 30% chance of increasing the duration of all debuffs on the target by 1 turn, and then damage inflicted by each attack increases by 30% if the enemy's current HP is over 50%, which is where his major damage comes into play. With his passive and his Holy Sword ability, he's going to hit extremely hard for the very first time on a boss when they're above that 50%. And then his passive aura, increase ally attack in all battles by 23%. Overall, an extremely good champion. A lot of people used him in Doom Tower previous to the whole max HP passive buff that got put on many of the bosses. He still hits extremely hard. I still think he's definitely worth getting. I think he's still going to be useful in Doom Tower. He's going to be useful more or less also in the higher dungeons once those are actually released as well. So definitely a great pickup during this 10 times event. Next, we're going to go into the Sacred Order area, and we're first going to look at Inquisitor Shamael. He is going to be one of the voids that you can get during this event. In attack-based champion. On the A1, Wreak Havoc, attacks one enemy, has a 50 or a 75% chance if you book it of decreasing the duration of a random buff on the target by 1 turn. Nothing too crazy right there. Is somewhat a little bit nice on that though if the target does happen to have a buff, so good on Doom Tower waves. Every time an enemy places a debuff on an ally, uses the skill against that enemy. And then counterattack. The counterattack will only deal 50% of the normal damage and cannot be critical. So every time an enemy places a debuff, he will A1 which has a chance at, reducing that random buff by 1 duration, but it doesn't do a lot of damage. And like it says, the counterattack will only deal 50% of the normal damage and cannot be critical. So it's a little bit of a cool thing interaction where he'll get an extra little hit here and there, but nothing too major. On the A2, Cow the Horrors attacks one enemy 3 times, will ignore 25% of the target's defense, will ignore a further 25% of the target's defense for each buff on this champion, which means you only need 3 buffs on this champion to ignore 100% of the defense with this ability. And then places a True Fear debuff on all enemies for 1 turn if this attack kills an enemy. And you're booking for damage here. Yes, you do need the accuracy in order to land that True Fear. And yes, this hits extremely hard. I was using Inquisitor Shamael for a while now, and he does hit like a truck. I find my most use of him in the Doom Tower waves specifically, just because that True Fear comes in pretty clutch, and he is a great burst damage champion for things that you have to kill specifically. I know previous Doom Tower they had the whole Rhodos and Siphi, sorry, could not think of the name, Siphi and Rhodos waves, and you could pretty much use Inquisitor as long as he's fast enough to just one-shot the Siphi with this ability. So just keep that in mind. A very good damage dealer in my opinion, and can be used anywhere because he's void. And then on the passive, interesting passive for PvP. Each critical hit fills the champion's turn meter by 7.5%. Pretty cool there, nothing crazy though. Whenever an ally receives a Fear or True Fear debuff from an enemy, this skill will instantly remove that debuff and fill the ally's turn meter by 15%. Pretty major in PvP, especially against stuff like Mashalad and whatnot, or maybe even Madame Saris. But yeah, pretty good ability. And then he has ally accuracy in Doom Tower by 60 for his aura, so pretty good pickup if you can get him. Nothing too crazy, not a very needed champion, but a pretty cool one if you do happen to get him. Next is going to be another Sacred Order champion by the name of Martyr. Pretty well known, but let's go through her kit. So defensive legendary champion, A1 rush, attack one enemy, has a 50, 60, 75% chance of placing a 60% decreased defense debuff for 2 turns. I think that's 75. Yeah, 75. So pretty good A1, pretty decent chance once booked, pretty low chance when not booked though. On the A2, Bastion of Faith places a 60% increased defense buff and a counterattack buff on all allies for 2 turns, and you can drop this down to a 3-turn cooldown. Extremely good ability. The increased defense, survivability, counterattack, definitely worth using, especially for stuff like Clan Boss. Even now you can use it on Grithian as a pretty cool tactic in order to get past that new boss in the Doom Tower. Overall can just be used everywhere though. And then on the A3 we have Suppression. Attack all enemies, places a 50% decrease attack debuff for 2 turns, and then also places a provoke debuff for 1 turn, and you can drop this down to a 4-turn cooldown. Pretty good CC during the Doom Tower waves, or any waves in general. And then the decrease attack is always just a very welcome debuff for survivability. So extremely good there. And then we have a great aura. Increase allied defense in all battles by 33%. Extremely good champion, in my opinion. Counterattacks and stuff like that have been kind of down recently, not very looked upon, but I think counterattacks are coming back with the new bosses and stuff like that. And overall, bringing an increased defense, a counterattack, and a decreased attack. And a decreased defense actually. So I mean, she has everything in her kit, so definitely a great pickup for anyone during this 10 times event. Next we have a barbarian by the name of Altan. Altan, one of the champions I really want, I've been wanting for a long time. But yeah, let's go through his kit. So he is a defensive champion, which is a little odd. I always thought he was an attack-based champion back when I first started, but defensive champion. On the A1, attack one enemy has a 60 or 75% chance once booked of placing a 50% decrease attack debuff for 2 turns. Really good. Defensive champion applying a decreased attack is pretty cool, and especially on the A1. On the A2, we have Wall of Flame, attacks one enemy, places a 60% increased defense debuff on, or increased defense buff on all allies for 2 turns, and then places a shield buff on all allies for 2 turns equal to 20% of their max HP if this attack kills an enemy, and you can drop it down to a 3-turn cooldown. From what I've understood, Altan hits like a truck, so the fact that he's going to give everyone increased defense and then apply a shield if it kills someone is pretty cool. Nothing too crazy. I do like the fact that it does have the increased defense though, because he's pretty much buffing his own damage along with protecting the rest of his allies. So pretty cool ability there. And then on the passive, Fiery Rebirth revives a random ally with 30% HP every time this champion kills an enemy. Resets the cooldowns on this champion's skill if the champion kills an enemy and all allies are alive. So very clutch in PvP because he hits like a truck. If someone happens to drop, you can actually just have him kill someone, randomly revive someone, and then he resets his cooldowns, which is pretty cool. Can be very helpful in stuff like Ice Golem currently, because Ice Golem hits extremely hard and you have 2 adds that you can continuously kill throughout the fight. You can pretty much revive every single time. Now keep in mind the Ice Golem will be changing his affinity later on when it gets buffed up, but I think he's still going to be relevant in there in my opinion. So overall, a very good champion, hard-hitting champion that gives you the decreased attack on the A1 and an increased defense on the A2, and a possible revive through waves. Like I said, can be used in dungeons, can be used possibly in Doom Tower if you even wanted to. And then he has the increased allied defense in all battles by 33% aura, very similar to Martyr. So yeah, very good pickup if you can get him. I think he's a very interesting champion, hard-hitting champion, can be used in PvP and PvE. Definitely a champion that I want though. So next on the list is going to be a skinwalker by the name of Basher. So Basher is a void epic attack-based champion. Is going to become useful in the Doom Tower because of the new dragon boss, where you can put stuff or increase the cooldown of abilities. So let's jump into his kit. So on the A1, we have Splintering Bash. Attack one enemy, has a 75% chance of placing a weaken debuff for 2 turns. Pretty cool A1. Nothing like, it's not a major debuff that everyone's looking for, but weaken is never a bad thing. On the A2, we have Stinging Blast. Attack all enemies, increases the cooldown of all of the target's skills by 2 turns, and this can be put on a 3-turn cooldown. Pretty major for Ignoth or whatever the dragon's name is. I'm kind of blanking on the dragon name, but you can use this ability to increase the cooldown of all his abilities, possibly keeping everything on cooldown if you can combine him with someone else. If you're like lucky enough to have a warlord, or maybe have like double basher or something like that, can become very useful. So pretty cool there. In general, very good ability though for PvP. If you can get him to go quick enough, you can put everyone else's cooldowns on cooldown right off the bat, so they're all using their base default skills. So pretty cool there. And then you have the A3, Cause Fear, attacks 4 times at random, has a 100% chance if you book it of placing a block buffs debuff for 2 turns, and this is on a 4-turn cooldown. Once again, a very cool ability, especially for PvP. Blocking buffs from people is very cool. The only thing I don't like about this ability is it's 4 times at random, so it has the chance of hitting the same target. But yeah, overall, very good champion. And then it also has, or very good ability, but also a very good champion. And on the passive or aura, he has an increased ally HP in all battles by 25%. Not bad, nothing too amazing, but can be useful if you just don't have a very good aura in general. Yeah, so very good champion, very good pickup. Void though, so I know we're probably running low on Void since it was just 2 times Void. Next we have on the list are some orcs. So the very first orc we're going to look at is Vrask. Vrask, very underrated in my opinion. I'm pretty sure a couple content creators have already said this, but he's extremely good. I honestly had him at 50 for the longest time. I recently pushed him to 60 during the last Doom Tower reset, and he has been extremely good. So yeah, let's jump into his kit. So he is an HP based champion. So on the A1 we have Whack, attack one enemy, fills this champion's turn meter by 20% if this attack is critical. Pretty much he's gonna be one of the weird champions that you build crit rate gloves on just because you need him to crit. And you'll see why in just a second. So pretty cool there. You're building him for crit, so he is always pretty much going to get this turn meter fill off on the A1. On the A2 we have lightning strikes, attack one enemy, very basic. Can drop this down to 3 turns and increase the damage if you want to book it. Nothing too crazy though. But then we have his passive cannibalism, heals all allies by 10% of his max HP when he inflicts a critical hit. Hence why you want the crit rate gloves on him, just to guarantee the heals off of him. And then he has the aura of increasing ally defense in dungeons by 33%. Pretty cool, pretty cool aura. But yeah, so pretty much I have mine built in a relentless set, so he takes multiple turns possibly, or gets those extra turns. Can fill his turn meter a little bit more, and then every time he crits he's healing based off of his max HP to everyone, which is ridiculous. He does a crazy amount of healing. I used him in Nether Spider last reset before. Now he is opposite affinity of the Nether Spider, so unfortunately he's not going to do extremely well in there anymore. But in general, I think he is a great and underrated champion that will put out a lot of heals. Definitely not what you would expect him to heal. So yeah, pretty dang good pickup. Extremely well for faction wars as well though. He can be your saving grace in faction wars, let's just say that. Next one is going to be Angar. So Angar, a void legendary for this event. HP based champion again. So on the A1 we have Exapparate, I think. Attacks one enemy 2 times and then places an extra hit if the enemy has a provoke debuff on him. And you will have books to increase the damage here. Nothing too crazy. That extra hit does kind of come in handy though. On the A2 we have Infuriate. Attack all enemies, places a provoke debuff on them for 1 turn, and then places a 30% refight damage buff on all allies for 2 turns. Also places a counterattack buff on this champion for 2 turns. And you can drop this down to a 3-turn cooldown with increased damage. Very good for Doom Tower waves in my opinion. He is a void based champion, so he's not going to have those weak hits. You're going to have that provoke for the CC. And then his passive is where the big CC is going to come in. So you're placing provoke, you're getting the reflect damage, and you're placing a counterattack on this champion. But with the passive, if an enemy with a provoke debuff attacks, you have a 50% chance, if you book it, of placing a provoke debuff on them for 1 turn, and then each hit taken will reduce damage taken by 5% up to 30% in 1 round. So pretty much if a provoke champion, which will have to hit him because of the provoke, you have a chance at replacing that provoke. And then you're also counterattacking with 3 hits because they have the provoke when they attack. So very cool CC champion as long as you can build him correctly. And then his aura, increase ally HP and faction crypts by 44%. Definitely not that useful of a aura, but can be useful in faction crypts. But yeah, very good champion. Can be used in PvP to a very good extent with the CC if you make him quick enough. But yeah, overall, very underrated void legendary that not a lot of people talk about, but is extremely good in situations like that. So yeah, I used him in the Doom Tower waves and in Faction Wars to a very, very good finish on both of those. So definitely worth grabbing if you can get him. Next, we have a champion that I think everyone is familiar with and wants, Bad-el-Kazar from the Undead Hordes. So, support champion. If you don't know what he does, I don't know where you've been, but we'll go over his kit just in case. So on the A1, attack all enemies, heals this champion and all allies by 20% of the damage inflicted. You can increase the healing and damage from this ability with books. Nothing too crazy there though. Where his abilities come into play is his A2. So Malice, remove all debuffs from all allies, so a cleanse, and then places 2 continuous heal buffs on all allies for 2 turns. Pretty crazy right off the bat. And then places 2 5% poison debuffs on all enemies for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown if you book it. Absolutely ridiculous because he only has 2 active abilities. I have mine in a reflex set and he will trigger it so much and Malice like crazy. So definitely a very cool ability. On his passive, we have Prey Upon. All allies inflict 20% more damage against targets under poison debuffs. Makes him even better. And then his aura, increase ally crit rate in all battles by 25%. Nothing too crazy there. But the rest of his kit is absolutely amazing. So yeah, reflex set makes him crazy good, but he is just crazy good in general. So he can be used everywhere. Not really seen in PvP, but honestly, right now you could technically build him to solo dragon up until the change to dungeons. But yeah, overall, crazy, need to have on account changing in my opinion. Yeah. And then the last 2 champions are going to be from Night Rev. So first we have Golden Reaper, another Void Epic, so support champion, all about speed in my opinion. So on the A1 we have Harvest of Blood, attack one enemy, has a 30 or 50% chance of placing a 50% chance of decreasing the cooldown of one of a random ally's skills by 1 turn. Nothing too crazy, but can be pretty cool in certain situations. On the A2, we have Maelstrom. Attacks all enemies, has a 50 or 75% chance if booked of placing a 50% decrease attack debuff for 2 turns, and then decrease the turn meter of each target by 20% if they are not under decrease attack. So pretty cool AoE decrease attack or decrease turn meter if they happen to not be under that. Then on the A3, very good turn meter ability, so it places a 30% increased speed buff on all allies for 2 turns, and then boosts their turn meter by 20% as well on a 3-turn cooldown. Very good, especially for the speed-based champions. Can be used very well in PvP for getting that turn manipulation. Can also be just used in dungeons in general. Does very well in faction wars. Honestly, does very well everywhere. Very was a very popular champion in the past. Hasn't been really talked about recently. But yeah, extremely good champion. And then Aura, increase ally accuracy and faction crypts by 40. Nothing too major there. Pretty good pickup if you are in need of a speed, like a turn meter manipulation type champion and increased speed buff champion. But yeah, nothing too crazy though. Not a very needed champion, but pretty cool champion. And then last will be MVP of Doom Tower, Doompriest. So Doompriest has been gaining popularity like crazy, and it's because she just fits well everywhere. So support-based champion, only has 2 abilities. On the A1, attack one enemy. If the hit is critical, places a 15% increased crit rate buff on a random ally for 2 turns. Nothing crazy at all right here. You're pretty much going to build all your damage dealers to have 100% crit, so this isn't going to do too much. So yeah, pretty normal A1. On the A2 though, we have Mass Possession, places a 50% increased attack buff on all allies for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. Once again, nothing crazy at all. Does help with helping out your damage dealers though with the increased attack. But what she is known for, the passive Bolster. Heals all allies by 7.5% of their HP, and then removes a random debuff from them at the start of this champion's turn. Very, very good in my opinion. The whole once per turn cleanse, even though it cleanses only one debuff off of everyone, it's still one debuff off everyone every single turn. So I have her in a relentless set. Taking extra turns, doing that extra cleanse is crazy, along with the extra passive heal is absolutely amazing. Can be used absolutely everywhere. It can come in clutch with Nether Spider, Grithian, the new dragon boss. I keep on forgetting his name. Yeah, so extremely good for Doom Tower specifically, but can also be used in PvP depending on how you build her. In any of the dungeons if you're having issues with cleansing and stuff like that. Just an overall great champion. She doesn't need accuracy or anything, so you can build her very defensively or very fast, high HP, high defense, whatever you want to build her with. But yeah, extremely good champion. So that is it for the 10 times event. Overall, do I think you should be summoning during this event? I usually would not recommend doing so because it is a 10 times event. On top of that, we also have the summoning event happening next week, which means you're going to be summoning. You're going to need shards for the summoning because there's always a summoning event going on with the fusion event. But yeah, there is a lot of good champions in this list though, so I can't say that you should totally ignore this, especially with the guaranteed extra legendary through ancients during this event. Now do keep in mind, I do want to warn you guys, like I said, the fusion event is next week, but we also have 2 times ancients next week, I believe, and so I think they're trying to get you to use some ancients during this to get that guaranteed legendary. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a weird say. In my opinion, I would say maybe try if you're especially if you're looking for some of these specific champions, because there are a lot of good champions on this list. But do keep in mind the fusion event next week and also 2 times ancients next week can be a little bit rough if you are wanting to use ancients though. So yeah, just keep that in mind. My recommendation, a lot of good champions in this, but like I said, not a higher chance of summoning an epic or a legendary though. So even if you are using these shards, you're not going to have a higher chance of getting epics or legendaries, just a higher chance of getting these champions if you happen to summon an epic or a legendary. So just keep that in mind. My opinion though, might be worth going for if you have the extra resources or if you think you're going to be okay for the fusion event and the 2 times ancients next week. But yeah, I will let you guys go. Let me know what you guys think of this whole guaranteed Lego through ancients this weekend. Let me know if you guys are summoning this weekend, and let me know what you guys get this weekend. So I will talk to you guys later. Hope you have some good luck this weekend, and I'll see you guys later. See ya.